Ever had one of those weeks where life feels like it's just ganging up on you? Like, you lose your job, your relationship ends, your dreams collapse, and before you know it, you're standing at a bus stop contemplating whether existence is worth the price of the bus fare? Now imagine all of that. Plus, you're invited to a devil's feast, a literal competition in theft and robbery. And the guests? Oh, just your everyday billionaires, thieves, and tycoons explaining how to squeeze the last drop of blood from the poor. Yeah. Welcome to one of the wildest, angriest, and most rebellious stories ever written in African literature. And it all starts with one woman who's had enough. Our story begins in a small fictional Kenyan town called Ilmorog, where a traditional singer, a Gika player, is reluctantly about to tell us a story. He claims he doesn't want to tell it, but divine intervention and the will of the people leave him no choice. And thank goodness for that, because what follows is part tragedy, part political satire, and part revolutionary fire. Enter our protagonist, Jacinta Warĩĩnga. Life has not been kind to Warĩĩnga. She's just been dumped by her boyfriend, fired from her job after rejecting her boss's advances, and is now walking around Nairobi with the emotional energy of a used tissue. So naturally, she decides the best solution is to end it all. But just as she's about to commit suicide at a bus stop, a stranger steps in and saves her. He listens to her heartbreaking story, how she was impregnated as a teenager by a wealthy man, abandoned, and forced to give up every dream she ever had. Moved by her suffering, this stranger does what any reasonable person would do in this situation. He invites her to a party, but not just any party, a mysterious event known as the Devil's Feast. And apparently, this isn't your usual buffet and balloons affair. It's a competition in modern theft and robbery, where the rich and powerful gather to brag about how they've been exploiting the poor. Warĩĩnga hesitates. I mean, Devil's Feast doesn't sound like something you RSVP yes to. But fate has other plans. The event happens to be taking place in Ilmorog, where she was already headed to visit her parents. So she boards a rundown matatu, a minibus taxi, and the real adventure begins. The Matatu to Ilmorog is like the United Nations of misfortune. Every passenger has a story, and none of them are happy ones. First, there's Muturi, a handyman fired for daring to demand a living wage, from the same boss who fired Warĩĩnga. Small world. Then we meet Wangari, a veteran of Kenya's Mau Mau liberation struggle. After fighting for independence, she's now been arrested for vagrancy while looking for work. She's on her way to Ilmorog to point out thieves to the police so she can avoid jail time. Next is Gatuiria, a polite, educated student who studies local music. He's going to the feast not to join the thieves, but to see if the old folktales about demons and evil are true. And then there's Mwireri wa Mukirai, a wealthy businessman who proudly proclaims that theft is the secret to national development. According to him, countries that are poor simply haven't mastered the art of stealing. I can't decide if this is delusion or a TED Talk in the making. The passengers discuss the nature of good and evil and how, even after independence, Kenya remains under the thumb of foreign powers and local elites. The real masters are no longer colonial governors. They're foreign investors and comprador capitalists who exploit the people while pretending to be their own. Mwireri eventually drops a bombshell. The devil isn't actually hosting the feast. It's organized by an association of thieves and robbers, and those sinister invitations? Probably just the work of some radical college students. Aha! When they finally arrive, the event is more horrifying than anyone expected. One by one, powerful businessmen and tycoons take the stage to share their innovative ideas for profit, selling bottled air to poor villagers, harvesting and selling human organs to the rich, enslaving laborers for pennies while buying luxury yachts. It's basically a masterclass in evil economics. Mwireri himself takes the stage and suggests driving out the foreign powers to keep more wealth for themselves. But the room turns on him, apparently. Even thieves have internal politics. Warĩĩnga and Gatuiria remain to watch, horrified but curious, while Muturi and Wangari decide enough is enough. Muturi begins organizing a workers' revolt, and Wangari runs off to call the police. During a break, Warĩĩnga reveals to Gatuiria that her life was ruined by a rich old man from Ngũgĩ, a wealthy predator who impregnated her as a girl and vanished. She also learns that it was Muturi who saved her each time she attempted suicide. Back inside, the speeches continue. Warĩĩnga, overwhelmed, flees and falls asleep under a tree. In a surreal moment, the devil himself appears in her dream, offering her a place in the grand machinery of capitalist exploitation. She rejects him. When she wakes, Gatuiria tells her the police have arrived, but they're not arresting the thieves. They've detained Wangari instead. The police, it turns out, work for the wealthy. Soon after, Muturi returns with an army of workers, students, and peasants, and they storm the feast. Chaos erupts. The thieves scatter, but the police brutally crush the uprising. So, 2 years pass. Warĩĩnga is a changed woman, you know? She's trained in self-defense, studied Marxism, and finally, she's realized her dream of becoming a mechanical engineer. And, well, she's still holding on to that pistol Muturi once gave her, just in case. Now she's engaged to Gatuiria, who's composed this massive musical piece about Kenya's history. Together, they're getting ready to meet his family. But honestly, capitalism isn't done ruining her life. Her former boss, backed by foreign investors, goes and buys the garage where she works, just to demolish it and build a tourist inn. First, they visit Warĩĩnga's parents, who bless the union. Then they travel to Nakuru to meet Gatuiria's family. And that's when Warĩĩnga's world just shatters all over again. Turns out Gatuiria's family is one of those tycoon families she absolutely despises. Many of the thieves from the feast are there. And worst of all, Gatuiria's father is none other than the rich old man from Ngũgĩ, the man who impregnated her and abandoned her as a teenager. Warĩĩnga tries so hard to keep her composure, but as the old man grows more arrogant and threatening, something inside her just snaps. She pulls out her pistol and shoots him, and several other tycoons present, declaring that she will not allow them to continue ruining lives. Gatuiria stands frozen, torn between love and loyalty, as Warĩĩnga walks away without a backward glance.
Damn.
The story you've just heard is from Devil on the Cross by the legendary Kenyan writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a fiery, unapologetic, revolutionary novel that's as much a political statement as it is a piece of fiction. Let's be honest, this book isn't subtle. It doesn't whisper, it shouts. And the target of its anger is clear: the corrupt elites, the comprador bourgeoisie, the foreign capitalists, and the exploitative systems that keep the poor perpetually crushed. Warĩĩnga's story is deeply personal, but also deeply symbolic. She isn't just a woman struggling against misogyny and exploitation. She's Kenya itself. A country seduced, violated, and abandoned by the wealthy and powerful, yet still capable of rising, fighting back, and demanding justice. The Devil's Feast is, of course, a metaphor, a grotesque mirror of the capitalist world order. It shows how greed has become normalized, even celebrated. When businessmen talk about selling air and organs, it's absurd, yes, but it's also disturbingly close to reality. It's Ngugi's way of saying, look at the world we live in. Isn't this exactly what's happening? One of the most powerful aspects of the novel is Warĩĩnga's transformation. She begins broken, suicidal, and powerless. By the end, she's an engineer, a revolutionary, and, for better or worse, an executioner. Her journey is one from victimhood to agency, from despair to defiance. And that ending. Oh, that ending. It's one of the most controversial in African literature. Some see Warĩĩnga's final act of violence as justified, a necessary strike against entrenched evil. Others see it as a tragic loss of humanity, a descent into the same violence she despised. Ngugi leaves it deliberately unresolved, forcing us to confront our own beliefs about justice, revenge, and revolution. Ngugi wa Thiong'o is one of Africa's most influential writers and thinkers. Born in 1938 in Kenya, he was part of the first generation of post-colonial African authors to use literature as a weapon against oppression. Early in his career, he wrote in English, but later made a powerful political decision to write in his native Gikuyu, including this novel, which he famously wrote on toilet paper while imprisoned by the Kenyan government. Devil on the Cross was first published in 1980 in Gikuyu as Kaitani Mutharaba Ini, and remains one of the most radical novels in African literature. It's a blistering indictment of neo-colonialism, capitalism, and the betrayal of independence. Devil on the Cross isn't just a book, it's a punch in the gut. It's a story that refuses to be polite about injustice. It's messy, angry, and unapologetically political, and that's exactly why it matters. Warĩĩnga's journey is painful, yes, but it's also a story of resilience, awakening, and rebellion. And in a world still shaped by the same forces Ngugi railed against, her story feels as urgent now as it did in 1980. So if you're ready for a story that challenges you, infuriates you, and maybe even radicalizes you, then this is one you can't ignore. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And let me know in the comments. Do you think Warĩĩnga was justified in the end? Or did she go too far? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. If you're interested in diving deeper into this book, I've left some links down in the description. You can use it to grab yourself a copy and keep the adventure going. And if you're in the mood for more great reads, don't go just yet. Click on one of the videos popping up right now that I think you'll love. And don't forget to give this review a like, leave a comment, or even subscribe if you'd like to see more. Every bit of support helps us grow this little community of book lovers. See you in the next one.